looking deep down the left side. Mendeville into the end zone. Touchdown! Down the sideline, still falling to the house.
And the players streaming from the sideline to celebrate with 17 seconds left.
Welcome, everybody, to BVarsity Live for Thursday, March the 3rd. I'm Zach Ewing, alongside my trusty co-host, Trevor Horn.
Yes,
That's
hello,
the first time you've
how
ever
are-
been described as trusty, isn't it?
I'm
in your
good
entire
with
life.
that, whatever you want to say
Yeah.
today. We got the man, the myth, the legend in the room, so I'm all right with that.
We do have as our guest, and we're going to spend quite a long time with him, as far by our standards anyway, for 45 minutes with Roger Blake, the Executive Director of the state CIF. Roger, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for taking the time. And Roger's here, of course, with the CIF contingent for the State Wrestling Championships, which begin at Rabobank Arena tomorrow morning. And I think we asked you this last year, but you mentioned it's one of your favorite events.
There's a couple of favorites. I mean, this one, wrestling, and girls last week, we were up in Lemoore, or not, we were in Lemoore, we were up in Visalia, and then cross country and track and field championships. And it's ironic, all of them are held here in the central section, but it's just a different atmosphere. The competitors, they are battling, but they respect their opponents. They know what it took for them to reach this level, and it's fun. It's gratifying in my job with so many negative things that always come up to see the joy of the kids participating at this event. It's a blast.
And I just love, you mentioned track and wrestling specifically, the one-class element of it. In these individual sports where there is going to be a king or a queen of an event or a weight class, and doesn't matter the size school, doesn't matter what part of the state you came in, you are the champion.
Well, and that's kind of been California's motto from the beginning in those events, and I don't ever see it changing. It is one class, and you are the state champion. You're not the Class A champion, Class B. You are the state champion. And a few times when there's been discussions in track and field and in wrestling, maybe we should look at, oh, no, don't change it. And we're one of the few states in the United States that still operates that way, and we think it's such a positive thing.
And Saturday night when that mat gets raised and the spotlight's on it, and you know you have the two best wrestlers in the state, it's really special. And you mentioned negative things. We're going to get there. It's the news, the buzz over the last, 12, 18 hours or so around the state wrestling tournament has been around this case from the Bay Area, where there's a wrestler who qualified out of the Central Coast section, and then that was 2 weeks ago. Started practicing for the state meet with other wrestlers, and then realized about a week later he had contracted a skin disease.
Correct.
A serious skin disease, a contagious one, and he has hired an attorney, and they are asking for the meet to be postponed, to be pushed back. And so we have the executive director of the CIF here to say that will not happen. Right?
No, it's not going to happen. And it's always terrible in this sport, especially in wrestling, with its skin-to-skin contact. There's always the issue of dealing with different types of skin diseases. Mm-hmm. That's why, not just here in California, but nationally, there's strict protocols and checks prior to students having the opportunity to wrestle. This young man in question, he developed the skin disease, and it's a type of herpes. If any of us have ever had a cold sore, a cold sore is a herpes. It's a type. And what this young man has developed is a much more severe type of case. And it is highly contagious. And there's a period of time where, just as with you and I with a cold sore were contagious, so is this. Mm-hmm. And so that's why these precautions are so vital in the sport of wrestling. The wrestling community has been dealing with this for years. At this event this weekend, there's 3 full-time doctors that'll be there. And we have, I think, 27 athletic trainers. Before these young men get on the mat tomorrow, starting at 6 o'clock in the morning, they'll do their weigh-ins, and then they do what's called a skin check. And the athletic trainers and then the doctors are looking at all 561 student athletes to ensure that they don't have open sores, any other things that could be deemed as a potential herpes that could be contagious. This young man that competed 2 weeks ago at the CCS, there were over 600 athletes that competed at that tournament. They had both boys and girls, so over 600 kids. Right now, he's the only known individual that's been identified that has developed this. Mm-hmm. So for him, it's devastating and tragic. But the problem that we have now is that we're making sure that our medical people look at and go through the people that he had contact with that are coming this weekend. The CIF has been in contact with all of those competitors to make sure and ensure that are they showing any signs or symptoms. And there's an incubation period. Well, those competitors he wrestled with at the CCS, they're well past the incubation period now. It's an 8-day period. And so if they were going to develop those signs and symptoms, they would have. So, and none of them have at this point.
But the point is that those 8 who we think could be at risk are being checked and being watched carefully. And
Soon as it came to our attention that this young man had developed this, and we only found out through their lawyer. We didn't find out through the school or through the young man contacting and saying, we found out through their lawyer. So immediately we start, okay, let's backtrack. Who else may be at risk here? This really isn't a public health issue, a large health issue. It is for these 8 or 9 kids who had the exposures to this. Let's make sure that they're not carrying and being able to pass it on. They also had practice. His teammates at his school, we're having to work with them to let's make sure that they don't have. And
right.
So all of those precautions are taking place. All of those checks are taking place at their schools and with their local community doctors. But before they can get on the mats here this weekend, they'll be checked again.
Roger, was this a red flag for you, knowing that none of this came up until the lawyer contacted you, that the schools didn't contact you, that the section didn't contact you, that the coaches didn't contact you? Was that ever a red flag for you?
Well,
or is this just one of those protocol things you just got to go through?
It's one of those things we just have to deal with. It's always unfortunate when lawyers want to get in the middle of everything. But at least in this case, it's a concern about the health and safety of the student athletes, which is always going to be paramount to what we do. That's why, especially in the sport of wrestling, these protocols and these safety procedures are in place. The thing with a herpes virus, just like all of us as adults, once you have it, it can be in your system for the rest of your life. And so this young man, they believe, at least in the news articles I read, that he contracted it 2 weeks ago at this tournament. He may have had it in his system well in advance for weeks or months and even years before it erupts. So that's always one of those things. That's why these skin checks and these reviews before they're wrestling, and it doesn't just happen on Friday. It has to happen again on Saturday for all 561 wrestlers are here. So
right.
This kind of put a spotlight on an issue, which in one aspect I think is really good. It's put a spotlight and it shows the protections that are in place for the student athletes. I look at it maybe a little differently. This is like when we started learning so much about concussions. Okay, what are the protocols? What are we going to do to ensure the safety of our kids? Well, in wrestling, this issue has been, unfortunately, in existence for a long time. And these protocols have been in place for a long time to try to protect so that it doesn't become a public health issue. And in this case, it's limited to 500. We have 561 kids, and it's limited to a handful of students that we need to not just check once, twice, but we got to triple check. And all of the student athletes that have come in contact in the past 2 weeks with this young man that may have been exposed, these doctors are going to be doing triple checks on them.
Even postponing this a week, would this young man been able to wrestle if you did move the state championship back a week? Is that
well, and that's always a question people will ask, and we look at it and go, but we don't stop the championships when the players become injured in basketball or
right.
if someone comes down with the flu. The only time I think the CIF would ever look at postponing an incident or postponing a major event is there a public health concern that this could grow to that level?
Right.
This is far from that.
And just to clarify, Trevor, I think the attorney's statement does say that the client in question, and his first name is Blake, oddly enough.
Yes, it is.
I'm having trouble remembering his last name at this point, but that Blake has said he is done wrestling, and so that is not the concern. The concern is the public health. That's what the statement says. The statement also says the last day that he wrestled in practice was February the 25th, which is last Thursday. And so with the 8-day incubation period that you mentioned, that makes tomorrow the 8th day. So it's...
There's a debate, too, and this is where we're following up, because we need to make sure everything's accurate. There's a discussion where the practice on the 8th day was it on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Wednesday, Thursday?
Right.
And there's conflicting reports, and right now the schools that were involved with that, we're asking them. They were the ones that had the students there. What days did these contacts take place?
Right.
We're not leaving, it's kind of that old cliche thing. We're not leaving any stone unturned because you have to make sure you're trying to do the right thing. What's really good in the wrestling community, The wrestling communities deals with this all the time, and so they want to be proactive. They don't want to see this become an issue within their own teams and within their own programs. So the wrestling communities responded very well to this.
And now I saw a post on a message board, and I know that that's not the best place to get your information, but I'm just going to throw it out there.
Yeah.
Someone who was at that CCS meet who said they were very concerned with A, the condition of and cleanliness of the mats, and B, the way that groom checks and skin checks were being conducted. Have you heard any of that concern, and do you share any of that concern?
No, I can only attest to what I know, and what I know is what we're going to be doing here this weekend. So from that standpoint, no, I don't know what happened at the CCS. I don't know what the protocols and the things that they're doing. But I have to believe, because they don't want to have this become an issue, whether it's in the CCS or here in the central section. People are very proactive about this. But specifically your question, no, I don't know what happened. I saw the one comment from someone, or maybe in the news article, well, the bathroom floors were wet. Well, wet bathroom floors does not transmit this disease. It's skin-to-skin contact, open sore type of thing. So, I think there's, like most websites, or not websites, but blogs and comment boards, there's a lot of misinformation that's out there, maybe even regarding, the intentions and the things of this young man. I mean, the young man and his family are going through what's a terrible situation for them right now.
Absolutely.
And let's not discount that for this young man. It's terrible.
Well, I don't want to spend the entire time on this. We could probably, but we won't. Just to sort of finalize, Roger, in your eyes, the young men who are competing at Rabobank the next 2 days are as safe as could reasonably be expected.
And I think past reasonably expected, because we know we have an outbreak of a competitor that qualified to come here, and he had contact with some other young men that will be here. Those young men are being identified, have been identified. We've been in contact with them and their schools, and we're making sure that they're going to be not just checked once, twice, they're going to be triple checked on both days. Let's be absolutely sure. If we're going to err on the side of safety and caution.
Right. And the wrestlers that I've talked to and the coaches I've talked to aren't all that concerned, and Trevor's got a bottle of puree over there just in case anybody needs some antibacterial, which could come in handy. Let's move on real quick from that, Roger, where we got a couple minutes left in this segment. The competition itself, back in Bakersfield for 5 years starting this year. You announced that about a year ago, Saturday, a year ago. And it seems like everybody on both sides is excited to be back here.
We're excited. The competitors are excited. I mean, come on. This is a great event. We have huge crowds both days, and especially, as you said earlier, on Saturday night when that arena, Rabobank, is full, the spotlight comes down, those two competitors out there. You get chills up your spine. There isn't anything better. And it's high school sports at its best. And what's great, I love here in Bakersfield for this event, especially in wrestling, they're applauding the athletes. I mean, they're not necessarily, if the two student athletes are one maybe from Fresno and the other's from San Diego, the local crowd here is still respectful of the performance of those athletes. And they're cheering the performance of these two kids. And it's just, that's just a chilling moment. That's one of those fun times. So, yeah, this is a blast. The community here in Bakersfield, they have so responded to this event. And I think that's one of the things why I love coming here so much for this event. They're going to support Bakersfield High School is one of the front runners. They got a shot at the state championship this year. But the fans will still applaud the rivals from Buchanan or Clovis because they appreciate the performance of the athletes. That's what's just so great.
Right. If Buchanan or Clovis doesn't win the state title, we'll have a real story on our hands. That's what the math says. But Bakersfield does obviously have a very good team. Frontier's got a good team, another local team, and there will be some good local wrestlers out there as well. The 5-year extension, normally it had been in increments of 3 years, which is how it's done at most sites. Was that a show of faith from the CIF?
Absolutely. In fact, when we were looking at this and going down the road, we're saying, why do we go through this process every 3 years? We have a great home, a great community involvement. The Kern County High School Unified School District, they're great partners. Why? Why would we look to move? The only way we'll look to move in the future, do we outgrow this venue?
Right.
We came to Bakersfield because we've been at University of Pacific that only sat about 5,500 kids. Now we can, spectators, now we can seat about over 10,000. Does a day come that we have to move to a larger venue? But right now, yes, those 5 years, that was a commitment on the part of the city, the Visitors Bureau and this community's support of the CIF, it needs to be reciprocal.
Yeah.
They're great partners with us. We need to be great partners back. So what's great then for Bakersfield, we know that they know every year on this weekend, there isn't a hotel room to be found within 50 miles of here because we're going to fill it up.
Roger, it's just because you wanted to come back and see me every year. Just tell
That
everybody
was
the
it,
truth.
Trevor.
Just tell everybody
Well,
the
that
truth.
that's just like the icing on the cake. That's just part of the good
Too
part.
bad Zach sends me to Fresno for section basketball over the weekend. He gets to stay
Well,
here and be
see,
with
you didn't
guys.
see the contract Roger slipped me that said, make sure Trevor's gone while I'm here. You know?
That
so I
was-
can deal with him for a couple of hours, but that's it.
That was part of the deal. That was part of the deal.
Yeah, we had dinner in Visalia last Saturday. It's fine.
Well, yeah, and the girls' wrestling was in Visalia last weekend. It was unbelievable. I mean, we used to be at Lemoore High School, and we outgrew it. The spectators and the attendance outgrew it. So now we're at the convention center
and
in
it looks like it
Visalia.
may outgrow that at some point.
At some point we will, and I think at some point down the road we'll have to seriously consider how can we run the boys and girls events together. What's great
Well, you
here,
might just want to go ahead and send it straight to Selma High School for the next 3 years because
Well-
it looks like they are the cream of the crop in girls wrestling.
oh, they were phenomenal. And the Selma boys, don't look past them. They got. I'm sure the girls went home last
Selma's-
weekend and
yeah,
threw down
Selma's
the
got
challenge.
some
And they
boys,
got
yeah.
some kids. And the thing always that's amazing that you always have to remember, these are 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. Anything can happen once they step out to compete. The favorites don't always win, and so it'll be a fun time.
We need to take a break, but you hit on it real briefly there, the possibility of girls, boys together, and Rabobank does kind of provide for a possibility.
Look at this venue and the event, and with the convention center and the theater next door. We use the theater now for prep and things backstage. We could actually use the stage possibly as one of the venues for multiple mats going on out there. So that's absolutely one of the things we're looking at in the future.
Well, Roger Blake, CIF State Executive Director, kind enough to join us. We've got him for a few more minutes here. We're going to take a break on BVarsity Live and be back after this.